Oh, this looks garbage, let's watch it.
Welcome back to Movie Recaps. Today I will show you a 2019 comedy film, titled Son of a Rich. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Grisha is the son of one of the richest men in Russia and acts as such. He's spoiled, incredibly rude, and gets in constant trouble because he never gets consequences for his actions. He doesn't do anything useful in his life, he just spends his days partying, drinking, and using women. One night, after kicking out a girl he had promised a ride to because she wouldn't get intimate with him, Grisha is stopped by the police for speeding. He tries to bribe Captain Semyonov as he does with every cop he meets, but Semyonov won't accept the money. Grisha is still allergic to consequences though, so he tries to drive away, and Semyonov gets in front of the car to stop him. This doesn't stop Grisha, whose empathy is non-existent, and he keeps on driving with Semyonov holding onto the hood of the car. Moments later, Grisha's dad Pavel goes to the police station to pay the bail and release his son, who continues to be a spoiled brat asking to be served even while locked in a cell. The chief reminds Pavel of all the destruction Grisha has caused the past few months, including a yacht, and now he sent a cop to the hospital with grave injuries. The boy is simply out of control and Pavel seriously needs to do something. After the bail gets paid, Pavel scolds Grisha for his behavior and threatens with cutting him off, but Grisha doesn't care because he knows his dad is all bark and no bite. Feeling incredibly stressed, Pavel visits his friend with benefits, TV producer Anastasia, to find some comfort in her presence. He doesn't know what to do with his son anymore, and he can't even send him to the army because he already got him out of being recruited in the past. Anastasia gets an idea then. She knows a guy that she used to work with on horror movies that could help. His methods are unconventional but very effective, and Pavel accepts to pay him a visit. They find Lev Arnoldovich in his creepy house hanging from the ceiling with a rope around his neck, but it's all fake. This is what he does best, developing devices and special effects to trick the eye. After showing Pavel the method he used with a smoker client, which was pretending to cut his finger off, Pavel freaks out a little and wants to leave, but Anastasia convinces him to at least hear Lev's plan for Grisha. Many days later, Grisha is coming out of a club when he sees his car being towed, so he runs after the truck only to suddenly get shot and fall unconscious. He wakes up hours later to find himself in a stable, wearing strange clothes, and being told by stable boy Artyom that he needs to saddle the horses or their lord will get angry. Grisha doesn't understand what is going on, especially when foreman of the college comes to drag him out and kick him while yelling at him for not following orders. At that moment, the landowner Dmitry Timofeyev and his son Alexei Timofeyev show up and give Avi a whip, which he uses once on Grisha for not following orders. Dmitry tells him to get the horse ready now or he'll get a worse punishment, but when Artyom takes him back to the stable, Grisha jumps through the window and runs away. He seems to be in a village in 1860s Russia, before the abolition of serfdom. As he runs, Grisha asks people for help, requesting a phone or even the police, but nobody knows what he's talking about. Eventually, he makes it to the estate borders and accidentally falls into a lake, so when he comes back to the village to get dry clothes, he's captured by Avi and taken to be hanged for having run away. Luckily for him, Dmitry's daughter Aglaya shows up and asks her dad to have mercy on the prisoners because she's tired of all the killing. Seeing as it is her birthday, Dmitry agrees and Grisha is allowed to live. A bird is flying above them, taking it all in before up and asks her dad to have mercy on the prisoners because she's tired of all the killing. Seeing as it is her birthday, Dmitry agrees and Grisha is allowed to live. A bird is flying above them, taking it all in before leaving to enter a building near the edge of town. It's actually not a bird, it's a drone pretending to be one, because this whole deal isn't time traveling. It is Lev's plan to teach Grisha some discipline and Pavel's money allows for such an expensive production. Lev is in charge with the help of Anastasia, who uses her experience as a TV producer to keep the illusion going without any mistakes. There are cameras hidden everywhere in town, even in the trees, and there's always a sniper ready to shoot Grisha with a tranquilizer in case something goes wrong. After seeing the whipping of his son is real, Pavel is starting to wonder if he's done the right thing, but Lev convinces him this is for Grisha's own good. After seeing Lev and Anastasia argue, Pavel can't help to wonder what's the issue between them, and Lev explains that when Anastasia said they worked on a horror movie together she meant they used to be married. While Grisha spends some time alone in the stable coming to terms with the fact he's traveled in time, the actors are given the scripts for the next scene. The director reminds everyone of the rules: women shouldn't shave their legs, men shouldn't shave their faces, and things like bras, underwear, earrings, and rings are forbidden. Alexei picks his script up after saying hello to his girlfriend, Liza, who works as in charge of the horses and not acting. He also makes fun of Aglaya for her contract. The writers want her to be Grisha's love interest, which means she'll have to sleep with him, and that has Alexei wondering where the line between actress ends and harlot begins. Grisha starts living through an awful routine in the village. He has to wake up before dawn, eat broth with only flies as meat, work with horses he's scared of, use the forest as his bathroom, wear pants without underwear, and get whipped every time he's disrespectful. One afternoon, Misha is taking a break from work when he suddenly hears Aglaya crying. who explains to him that she's sad because her father wants her to marry an old rich man. Instead of showing sympathy, Grisha thinks it's a great idea, because if the man is so old then he'll die soon and Aglaya will get all the money. Some days later, Grisha steals a chicken and asks Artyom to get him some tools to make a soup, which Grisha ends up eating it all on his own instead of sharing it with Artyom, who did most of the work. When he discovers the chicken theft, he asks the culprit to confess or he'll whip someone at random. Once again, Grisha fails to show any sympathy for another human being and watches how Artyom is taken away for whipping without saying a word. Moments later, Artyom meets with Grisha and shows him the scars on his back, courtesy of the makeup department. Grisha continues not to care, and while explaining Artyom why, he sees Liza jumping off a horse and notices that she's wearing modern underwear when her skirt accidentally gets stuck. This could mean something for his situation, so he runs after her and throws her on the ground to try and see her panties again. But luckily other villagers intervene and get him off her so she can run away. Seeing as Grisha isn't making any progress, Pavel wants to shut down the whole operation, but their discussion is interrupted by some big news. Grisha is looking for Liza to apologize. The villager actors at first ignore him, since he isn't supposed to even know Liza, but Lev thinks this a great opportunity to get some progress done and orders the actors to tell him where she lives. Grisha apologizes to Liza, who has brought a wood stick with a nail just in case, and Liza accepts the apology but promises to still be wary of him for a while. Some days later, it's time to celebrate Ivan Kupala, a traditional holiday considered to be the most magical night of the year. Legends say that whoever you spend the night celebrating with will spend their whole lives with you. At the party, Grisha teaches the musicians how to play the lambada and gets the villagers to form a conga line, which Aglaya jumps into to tell Grisha that the prospect of an arranged marriage is too much for her to handle, so she'll walk into the lake tonight. Instead of following her to stop her though, Grisha finds Liza and begins telling her stories about the technology of the future after she takes pity on him and his loneliness and tells him she believes him when he says he's a time traveler. Their chat is interrupted by Artyom, who after several failed attempts to distract Grisha from Liz, mentions Aglaya has been seen near the lake. Grisha finally puts two and two together and rushes to the lake to save her and take her back to the village. However, when she comes on to him, he turns her down and goes searching for Liza instead. She isn't at the party, so he goes to her house, where all stagehands hurry to hide before she opens the door. Grisha wants to spend the night in Liza's company to see if the legend will come true for them, but Liza isn't interested and closes the door on his face. The next day, Lev decides Liza will be Grisha's new love interest, so she becomes another actress on set. She doesn't like Grisha very much and won't accept to kiss or sleep with him, but she does want to help make him a better person, even if Alexei isn't very happy with seeing his girlfriend get involved like this.
He doesn't want to touch the
production begins a new plot in the story. Alexei is found drunk downtown, having caused a lot of trouble and getting the sheriff hurt, thinking it was his right because he's a noble. Instead of feeling disgusted by the entitlement though, Grisha gets jealous because he thinks Alexei had a very fun night out.
They're massive though.
His attitude changes however, when Dmitri wants him to take his son's place and get the punishment instead of him. At first, Grisha doesn't want to do it, but Dmitri offers him his freedom and good food in exchange, so he accepts. This time he remembers to share the food with Artyom. Meanwhile, Anastasia and Lev start to get along again, and Pavel worries that they may get back together, but Lev finds this idea laughable because Anastasia obviously loves Pavel. This is shocking news for him since he's always thought their thing was only carnal, and now he has some serious thinking to do. Grisha is whipped 24 times, but Pavel can't bring himself to watch it on the screen, so he leaves the room. Anastasia follows him and comforts him by proving how well Lev's plans work. It was his finger-cutting trick that helped her quit smoking. After the punishment is over, Grisha goes to the landowner's house to ask for the papers that would grant him his freedom. Dmitri isn't around, so it's Alexei that receives him only to throw him on the floor, kick him and spit on him while calling him an idiot for ever believing they would set him free for real. Grisha stands and closes his fists, thinking about defending himself, but decides to leave the house without a word, to Lev's disappointment. From then on, Grisha continues to work as a stable boy, but he also starts spending more time with Liza and falling in love with her. One afternoon, while they are taking a walk together, they see a bird flying in a very weird pattern. It's a drone that has lost control. While the producers get the sniper ready in case it falls, Liza tries to distract Grisha by telling him she's seen the bird since she was a kid and she believes it to be her guardian angel. Thankfully, in the end, there's no need for the sniper. The technicians regain control of the bird and get it out of there. Meanwhile, Alexei and Aglaya are both rather angry with how things are going. Aglaya can't believe she's been replaced by Liza, and Alexei doesn't like seeing his girlfriend spend so much time with another man. The two of them end up making love inside a carriage and are accidentally found by Grisha and Liza, who were passing by. Liza is extremely hurt by having her boyfriend cheating on her, and Grisha thinks he's seen two siblings getting dirty with each other. Because of this, Lev fires Aglaya and Alexei. Liza's mood isn't very good since then, so to cheer her up, Grisha decorates the stable with candles and makes a special dinner for her, which they eat together while sharing a fork. Afterward, they go stargazing, and Grisha admits that if he was free, he would marry Liza. Remembering how he was tricked by the promise of his papers, he confesses he did want to punch Alexei and he didn't because when he looked at him, he saw himself. Touched by how much he's grown, Liza kisses him. Meanwhile, in the real world, Aglaya is on a famous talk show, telling the world about how Grisha has been kidnapped and now is getting tortured for fun. The police appear on the news and
fuck the subtitles, man.
The world about how Grisha has been kidnapped and now is getting tortured for fun. The police appear on the news announcing an investigation, and when Pavel sees this, he panics and wants to shut it all down before they arrive. Real world, Aglaya is on a famous talk show, telling the world about how Grisha has been kidnapped and now is getting tortured for fun. The police appear on the news announcing an investigation, and when Pavel sees this, he panics and wants to shut it all down before they arrive. Lev, however, tells him it's too soon and that they still have time to plan a final heroic act for Grisha to pull off. Seeing as Grisha is dumb and doesn't catch on any anachronisms going on, they decide to send a group of Mongols to invade the village. Grisha is spending time with Liza when she suddenly tells him that if for some reason they get separated, she wants him to know that for her.
She's mid. Listen, dude. Let me tell you something. Your brain doesn't have the capacity to process if it's mid or what does it look like when you touch the absolute
everything has been real. Artyom arrives then and tells them to quickly come back to the village because the Mongols have attacked. Believing the story with no issues,
RPGs.
Grisha thinks that they should go the other way to avoid danger, so Artyom uses an excuse Lev feeds him through his hidden microphone. The Mongols will burn the village if every worker isn't there. In the village, the Mongols have been given a huge food offering, but their leader also wants a woman, so he chooses one from the crowd. Her father immediately jumps in to defend her, and since Mongols respect bravery, they allow him to duel one of their soldiers for her freedom. The father loses and gets decapitated, but since he paid with his blood, this is enough to buy his daughter's freedom. So the next woman the leader chooses is Liza, but no matter how much she cries out for Grisha's help, he gets scared and goes away. Seeing the plan didn't work, Pavel is ready to shut it all down, especially since the police are on his way, but Lev wants to wait a little longer because he believes in him. When Grisha sees the bird drone fly above him, he takes it as a sign from Liza's guardian angel and decides to do the right thing. He gets on a horse and, after grabbing Liza's old stick, he rides back and hits the Mongols on the head before getting Liza on the horse with him and riding away. Right after they leave, the police arrive on set. Since Grisha isn't around, it's easy for Pavel, Anastasia, and Lev to lie to them and simply tell them they're filming a movie, which the officers believe, leaving without arresting anyone. Meanwhile, Grisha and Liza ride past the estate limits and find a gas station, which greatly confuses Grisha. Liza is about to explain everything to him, but that's the moment the sniper chooses to strike and knock Grisha out. He wakes later in the hospital, where Pavel tells him he's been 3 months in a coma after a car accident and pretends not to know what Grisha is talking about when he asks about the village and Liza. Grisha tries to go back to his old partying life, but it doesn't feel right anymore, and even gives his car to Captain Semyonov to compensate for what he did to him. One evening, while in a club, Grisha finds Alexei and Aglaya and tries to ask them about Liza, but they pretend not to know him. Grisha apologizes for the confusion while looking incredibly defeated, so the actors decide to take pity on him and give him some information. The following day, they take Grisha to the ranch where the production rented the horses and Liza works at, and when he finally sees her again, he asks her if what she had said is true and it truly had all been real for her. When she confirms it, the couple kiss and begins a new relationship. Sometime later, Grisha takes Liza as his +1 to his father's wedding to Anastasia, where he thanks him for having put him in this crazy project and making a better person out of him.
Okay.
From then on, more spoiled rich brats are taken to the village often and Grisha helps with their rehabilitation. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
Hey yo, that was pretty good though. Guys, I think it's because, see, I told you, if the plot is kind of interesting and the imagery isn't garbage, right? They're pretty fun to watch. Sometimes even the best movies, if they don't have a good imagery, right? Or a plot that's like interesting, they're not worth watching unless you watch the whole movie on your own.
Show you a drama film from 2022, titled In Our Prime. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care.
This is the game.
In the most prestigious high school in South Korea where the 1% gathers, Han Ji-woo fails to fit in. He used to be the smartest student in his old humble school, but here surrounded by geniuses, he is one step from the bottom of the class, especially in math, which is considered the most important subject to get into college. His classmates are rich, so they can afford tutors and boot camps, but Ji-woo is on student welfare and can't afford such things. His math teacher Mr. Kim Gun-ho reminds him these grades won't be enough to get into a prestigious college and asks Ji-woo to consider transferring. One night, Jiwoo's roommates give him money so he can sneak out and get some snacks and alcohol for everyone, but on his way back, Jiwoo is caught by the night guard Lee Hak-sung. The following morning, Mr. Kim tries to get him to confess who else was part of this plan, but Jiwoo values loyalty and stays silent. This catches his classmate Park Boram's attention but also gets him temporarily kicked out of the dorms. After class, his roommates try to give him some money as thanks and are shocked to hear Jiwoo doesn't want it because they're friends. They discuss the possibility of bringing in late-night snacks through other routes, but this has been impossible since Hak-sung started to work as a guard. They call him the commie officer because he's a North Korean defector. Later, Hak-sung goes to see his doctor, who tells him working as a night guard isn't good for his health and relying on sleeping pills causes his biorhythm to be off. Hak-sung reminds him that it's the only job he can get as a defector, so unless the doctor can get him a position somewhere else, he'll take the pills. Afterward, Hak-sung returns to his lonely apartment, where he spends his time feeding his turtle, drinking strawberry milk, and doing Sudoku puzzles. The following day, Jiwoo is kicked out of the dorms. Boram teases him on his way out, saying she thought he could be more than a loser, but it seems she was wrong. A couple of hours later, Jiwoo has returned to his family apartment, which he cleans before his mother comes back from work. She's a widow that has always worked very hard to raise him, so she's very proud of seeing her son in such an important uniform. Not having the heart to tell her he needs a place to sleep, Jiwoo says instead that he only came to visit her and he must return to the school before it gets too late. It begins raining on his way back, so Jiwoo tries to hide in the school's abandoned lab, but he's found by Hak-sung. The guard feels bad when he hears Jiwoo doesn't have a place to stay, so he invites him back to his office. While Jiwoo sleeps, Hak-sung finds the very hard math homework that Jiwoo couldn't finish. As soon as the sun raises, Hak-sung kicks Jiwoo out. The boy goes to his math class and is shocked to find his homework has been done by Hak-sung. Not only that, all the answers are correct. Boram notices this and wants Jiwoo to show the teacher, but he asks her to keep quiet. After class, Jiwoo goes to thank Hak-sung for the help and asks him to teach him how to do it, but Hak-sung just kicks him out again. Later, in the studying room, Jiwoo hears even his classmates' private tutors have trouble with some of these math problems, which indicates how special Hak-sung is. Jiwoo starts following him around, begging to be tutored, but Hak-sung won't pay attention to him. One afternoon, while he's taking out the trash, Hak-sung overhears the teachers talking about welfare students with uncaring parents and inferior complexes, and Mr. Kim includes Jiwoo on the list. When Jiwoo approaches him to ask for tutoring again, Hak-sung tells him it's better to transfer and that self-pity isn't a badge to carry because it gets you fixated on tragedy. Jiwoo explains how angry it makes him that others can have opportunities he can't, so Hak-sung gives in and accepts to tutor him. He only asks for Jiwoo to pay him with strawberry milk. The next day, Hak-sung visits his friend in Gi-chul,
like
who helped him come to South Korea because he works as Seoul's North Korean defector support lead. Together they play board games and chat about life, and when Gi-chul gets Hak-sung the lamps he needed as a gift, Hak-sung insists on paying
not Forrest Gump, I meant Good Will Hunting, sorry, fuck me, I'm so dumb.
For them because he didn't come to this country for charity.
Good Will Hunting, Jesus
When
Christ.
night falls, Hak-sung puts the lamps inside the abandoned lab so he can teach Jiwoo there in secret. There are 3 rules Jiwoo must follow. 1. Nobody must know about these classes. 2. No questions other than math. And 3. Hak-sung will teach math but he doesn't want to hear anything about grades or tests. After Jiwoo promises to follow all the rules, Hak-sung gives him the first exercise, finding the area of a triangle. Jiwoo solves it quickly, pointing out this is a middle school problem, but Hak-sung tells him he's wrong by drawing a full circle around the triangle. Feeling tricked, Jiwoo thinks it's unfair because Hak-sung has given him the wrong question, but Hak-sung's point is that he's approaching problem solving the wrong way. Yes, finding the answer it's important, but understanding what the question is, that's what is even more important. Math is all about the process of finding a solution. When Jiwoo shows an understanding of the concept, Hak-sung calls it epsilon as he has a flashback of how a younger he and a friend received a fancy pen as a prize for their academic success. Epsilon means small and insignificant, trivial even. After the class is over, since Jiwoo still doesn't have a place to go, Hak-sung allows him to stay with him. Jiwoo discovers that Hak-sung loves listening to classical music on an old cassette player, so they chat about classical composers for a while, which helps Hak-sung avoid Jiwoo's questions about his past. The cassette is worn out and has a bad sound quality, so Jiwoo plays the songs on his phone, the quality of which fascinates Hak-sung and helps him sleep deeply for the first time in ages. In fact, he stays in bed until late the next morning, and when he wakes up, Jiwoo has already left for class. Mr. Kim has some important news for his math students. Instead of having finals, his class will participate in the prestigious Pythagoras math competition, which will count as their exam. The teens aren't happy about this since they only have 2 months to practice, but Mr. Kim expects them all to win gold. Jiwoo goes to see Hak-sung every day for math classes, and Boram begins noticing how often Jiwoo purchases strawberry milk, almost as if he was an addict. One evening, There's a particularly hard exercise that Jiwoo needs to know the technique to solve, but Hak Sung explains he expects him to add it all up manually. 3 hours later, Jiwoo manages to solve it, so Hak Sung shows him something special. Famous mathematician Bernhard Riemann calculated 38 decimals of the square root of 2 by hand to become intimate with the solving process, which you can't do by just memorizing a formula. This is greatly helpful when it comes to a better understanding of math. Hak Sung refuses to tell Jiwoo if his answer is right or wrong because his homework will be to discover it himself. That's the job of a mathematician. As the weeks pass, Jiwoo improves his math skills more and more every day. One afternoon, he receives some devastating news. A close friend and fellow welfare student is transferring back to his old school, admitting having come here was never worth it. Now Jiwoo has some thinking to do about his own situation, and Boram tries to hear him out, but he feels like she's making fun of him by saying they're in the same situation when she's actually a rich kid too. Their conversation is interrupted when Boram's mother comes to pick her up. When they get in the car, Boram is scolded for hanging out with a welfare kid. Boram is technically on welfare too because of her divorced parents, but she isn't on financial aid, so it isn't really the same. Her mother also scolds her for listening to piano music because she wants Boram to concentrate on her studies, so she's hired Mr. Kim to be Boram's private tutor, which is illegal. Later that night, Jiwoo tells Hak Sung about his friend and wonders if he should transfer too. Hak Sung encourages him not to give up and reminds him the most important thing to succeed isn't intelligence but courage to prevail until the end. To prove his point, he shows Jiwoo the exercises he corrected. While there are some mistakes in the final solutions, the boy has correctly learned the process to solve them. That same night, Jiwoo's suspension ends so he gets to go back to the dorms, but he admits missing sharing a space with Hak Sung. The next day, Boram gifts him strawberry milk with an apology note, and when he gets distracted, she follows him to the abandoned lab and discovers his secret. After thanking Hak Sung for taking care of Jiwoo, she asks if she can come over from time to time, and Hak Sung accepts as long as she keeps it a secret too. Boram also calls him Kami officer and this confuses Hak Sung. He may be from North Korea, but he never served in the military.
This is
For a
garbage.
reason he doesn't bother to explain, he was
shit.
exempted. At that moment, they notice a group of students sneaking around the campus, but having learned what happened to Jiwoo last time, Hak Sung decides to do nothing about it. Another evening, Jiwoo asks Hak Sung why he studied math so hard. He explains that at first, he did it for the scholarship and the sake of his family, but the more he learned about it the more beautiful he found it, so he fell in love with it. Then, they call Boram to join Hak Sung at the piano so he can teach her a cool little trick, assigning a note to each digit. The two of them make a beautiful melody by playing the number pi. During the next math class, Jiwoo corrects Mr. Kim's answer to an exercise using the logic Hak Sung taught him about incorrect questions. However, Mr. Kim scolds him for it. The answer may be correct, but it's not what the examiner intended, and that's the only thing the students need to worry about, giving the solution that is expected, not the one that is right. It's all about test technique, but Jiwoo doesn't accept this and replies he'll still give the right answer on the test. Considering him rude for such attitude, Mr. Kim makes him stand outside the door for the rest of the class. Afterward, Jiwoo informs Mr. Kim that he won't be transferring. In the afternoon, during another of Hak Sung's visits, Gi-chul gifts him a smartphone so he's easier to find. Hak Sung happily shows it to Jiwoo later, and the boy can't help noticing he's reading long theses on this tiny screen. To help, Jiwoo asks a classmate to sneak him into the computer lab so he can print the entire document and gift it to Hak Sung. The next day is the Pythagoras test. Jiwoo is doing wonderful thanks to Hak Sung's lessons, and while Boram starts well enough by remembering the music, she soon gets frustrated. Pressure takes a toll on her, and she ends up leaving the classroom without finishing the exam. Her mother makes her stay home to avoid shame and lies to the school, saying that they'll go away on a trip. When Jiwoo tries to contact her, all his texts are ignored. In the evening, Jiwoo and Hak Sung go to a classical concert that Boram got them free tickets for because her family's company sponsors it. Boram never shows up, but at least Hak Sung enjoys it so much that he's moved to tears. Afterward, Hak Sung invites Jiwoo to have dinner at his place, which makes Jiwoo realize this is the first time he sees Hak Sung eat. That same night, someone leaks the Pythagoras test on the internet, causing trouble for the teachers, who now must find the student that did it if they don't want the education board to fire them. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Hak Sung go to a bookstore to do some shopping, and a stranger recognizes Hak Sung. This man also comes from North Korea and calls Hak Sung doctor, remembering him from the days Hak Sung taught classes at the university he attended. The man also calls Hak Sung the famous mathematical genius and thinks Jiwoo is his son, which puts them in an awkward situation. Hak Sung thanks the man for the memory and rushes to leave the store, refusing to answer Jiwoo's questions. When he gets home, Hak Sung remembers the good times he used to have with his son Lee Taeyeon, like having dinner together, getting the turtle, and buying strawberry milk because it was Taeyeon's favorite. The next day, some important news appears on TV. The Riemann hypothesis, one of the most important mathematical problems, is about to be solved by a famous North Korean called Lee Hak Sung. So far it's still ongoing review by a board of scholars. Professor O on TV tells the story of how he entered a math Olympiad when he was a kid and met Hak Sung, who represented the North while O represented the South. They both were given a fancy pen by a famous mathematician and O still has it to this day. Both Gi Chul and Jiwoo see the news, and it's Jiwoo that finds Hak Sung first to ask him about it. However, Hak Sung gets angry and asks him to never mention the Riemann hypothesis again. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim is having trouble with the test incident because his reputation is on the line, but when a coworker reviews the security tapes after a student passed on some rumors, he finds his salvation. The following day, Mr. Kim calls Jiwoo to show him the recording of him sneaking out of the computer lab with some printed sheets in his hands. Jiwoo tries to explain that it's unrelated, but he has no way to prove it. Between the tape evidence and the fact he magically became better at math in a few months, nobody will believe him, so Mr. Kim offers him a deal. If he accepts to transfer, he won't make his blame public. Sadly, the rumors of Jiwoo having done the leaking still reach everyone's ears, and Boram gets upset about it because she knows the truth. Gi Chul is having some trouble of his own too. North Korea is angry that the South is taking Hak Sung's achievements, especially since these discoveries are tied to military encryption, so the niche wants Gi Chul to convince Hak Sung to appear on TV to clarify matters. Hak Sung's name is all over the news now, and an old colleague even visits him to convince him to return to the North together. However, he puts his foot in his mouth when he admits he's asking because bringing Hak Sung would earn him forgiveness too, and only manages to anger him by bringing up what happened to his son. Gi Chul visits Hak Sung to apologize for not being able to keep the niche off his back, but Hak Sung is still thankful for all the years of protection. While Hak Sung's packing to leave town, Gi Chul returns to him the document with his research, which Hak Sung tried to throw away years ago and Gi Chul saved it because it was too valuable to be trash. At that moment, Jiwoo arrives as well, but he decides to stay outside when he hears yelling. Hak Sung is angry because it was this research that cost him his son's life, so he refuses to put it on TV. After Gi Chul leaves, Jiwoo tries to talk to Hak Sung, but the old man only lashes out at him, refusing to accept they are anything closer than tutor and student. Afterward, Jiwoo gets a call from an upset Boram, who doesn't understand why he's letting them frame him like this, but he just tells her it's over and hangs up. In the meantime, Hak Sung arrives at the bus station and when he thinks he saw his son's face on a random stranger, he begins to remember the night Taeyeon died. After he got into another fight for defending fellow defectors, Taeyeon began arguing with his dad, accusing him of having escaped to the south for selfish reasons because he didn't do it when his mom was sick with tuberculosis. Hak Sung insisted he did it to give his son a better life, but Taeyeon pointed out that doing entry jobs and being treated like dirt was far from a better life for a scholar. After wishing his dad to enjoy his life with only math as a company, Taeyeon ran away and tried to go back to the north by swimming, but he was shot on sight by border patrol. Back to Jiwoo, he sneaks into his home to use her mother's stamp on the transfer papers while she's sleeping. The next morning, he hands the papers to Mr. Kim, who tells him he did the right thing. Hak Sung is hiding in a hotel while Gi Chul searches for him to take him to the TV show, and he is surprised to get a call from Boram telling him about Jiwoo's transfer. That afternoon is the Pythagoras Award ceremony. Jiwoo is on his way out of the school, but Boram suddenly arrives and drags him with her to the auditorium by stealing his stuff. Professor O opens the ceremony with a speech about the recently proven theory, and that's the moment Hak Sung decides to interrupt, having rushed over to the school after freeing his turtle on the river. He presents his pen as proof of his identity, so Professor O receives him with open arms and allows him to give a speech too. After making a joke about his work as a guard, Hak Sung confesses he was the one that taught Jiwoo math and presents the printed thesis as proof that he didn't leak the test. He also reveals that it was Mr. Kim that leaked the test to his private students, which causes Mr. Kim to leave with anger and shame. Then, Hak Sung shares a bit of his story. He defected North Korea so he could study math properly, because his own government was using his research to build weapons. He wants his math to be used to find jobs and get into good colleges, but such greed cost him his son's life. Hak Sung is ashamed of his choices, yet Jiwoo never saw him that way and stayed loyal to his secret until the end even if it would cost him his future. Crying, Hak Sung apologizes and thanks Jiwoo for believing in him, and such speech makes Gi Chul, who has been listening all along, leave without even asking about the TV interview. He does however, wait for Hak Sung outside and offer him a ride. After throwing away the smartphone he had gifted him, Gi Chul reveals a little surprise for Hak Sung, a new, legal passport that marks Hak Sung as a South Korean citizen, and tickets for him to leave town so the niche can't find him for a while. Gi Chul will probably get fired for it, but he thinks it's worth it. Sometime later, Gi Chul visits Jiwoo to give him the gift Hak Sung left for him, the famous pen and the first draft of his thesis. 3 years later, Jiwoo and his college class visit the prestigious Oberwolfach Research Institute for Mathematics. Hak Sung is working there now, and Jiwoo surprises him with some strawberry milk and a hug before diving into a long talk about math. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.